Hello, I'm Ronald Inglehart, founding president of the World Values Survey. And today, the European Values Survey and the World Values Survey are jointly releasing data from 78 countries around the world in our latest wave of surveys. These surveys constitute a valuable resource for social scientists, and I'd like to discuss some of the things you can do with it. Cross-national surveys can help provide something that has rarely been available in the past. It helps you learn what's going on inside people's heads in a broad perspective. We've had vast amounts of data on economic and demographic variables for 70 or 80 years, and it's very useful. I rarely do an analysis without looking at life expectancy or gross national product per capita. You've much less data on what's going on in people's minds, what they value and believe. And when you get data on it, it turns out to be as important, have as much impact in an analysis, quite often, as the demographic and economic variables. So this is a resource that we can use to understand what's going on and to fill out the picture in trying to understand the dynamics of societies. The value surveys have covered 110 countries, covering over 90% of the world's population. And they enable us to understand linkages between things inside people's heads and societal characteristics such as whether a country is authoritarian or democratic. This is true because when you have 110 countries, the societal characteristics such as democratic or non-democratic or percentage of women in parliament are no longer constants. In a survey in only one country, it's a constant, whether the country is either democratic or totalitarian or authoritarian or somewhere in between. So you can't analyze any linkages. With the value surveys, we can do this, and the results are really fascinating. Until we had the data from the major cross-national survey programs, these linkages could only be guessed at. We sort of had some interesting theories about certain values are compatible to or conducive to democracy, but they were sort of guesses. They were plausible guesses, and some of them turned out to be right. Not exactly right, in fact, but they turned out to be in the right ballpark. Let me give you an example of one really interesting. Societal linkage with culture, the linkage between what's inside people's heads and what the society does. In 1981, the time the first value survey was carried out, same-sex marriage was not legal in any country in the world. And accordingly, the value surveys in that time found that homosexuality was not accepted by the majority of the population in any country. But the Netherlands came closest. The Dutch population was relatively tolerant of homosexuality, and we found something really interesting. There was a big difference between the orientations of younger and older Dutch. Younger Dutch were much more tolerant of homosexuality than older ones. We thought that this indicated an intergenerational value change, but of course, with one time point, we couldn't prove it. With successive surveys, we found there was indeed a intergenerational value change taking place. As younger respondents replaced older respondents in the adult population, the Netherlands became progressively more tolerant of homosexuality. This was true in the Netherlands and a number of other countries, with the Dutch leading the way. Well, as time went by, in 2001, same-sex marriage was made legal in the Netherlands, the first country in the world to do so. And this was indeed part of a broader change. Today, same-sex marriage is legal in 28 countries, and it's continuing to grow. So this is clearly not an example of something being made legal and then the public coming to accept it. Quite the opposite. We had data 20 years earlier that suggested a trend in this direction was taking place. We couldn't say exactly when it would break through, but in fact, it did break through in the Netherlands just about the time when a majority of the Dutch population had come to be tolerant of homosexuality. This is one of many examples of what these surveys can do. It's, for example, another example is these surveys cover the full range of economic variation, which makes it possible to trace the differences between the values prevailing in rich countries and poor countries. And there are very big, pervasive differences between what the people of low-income countries want and believe and tolerate and so on, and the worldviews of people in high-income countries. This gives us some sense of what's likely to happen as economic development takes place. It's not a crystal ball. We don't have tight predictions, of course, because there are many other factors involved. But it does give us a broad sense of what is likely to happen. Other factors enter into it too, as economic development takes place. We also cover the full range of cultural variation, for example, Muslim majority, Protestant, Catholic, Confucian influence, Buddhist, and so on. And this turns out to be, when we analyze, a strong predictor of what people believe and do and value. And we also have data on the full range of countries from intensely religious to overwhelmingly atheistic. This is also a strong predictor of all kinds of things, not surprisingly, fertility rates and attitudes toward divorce and so on. And another interesting thing is the religion, the role of religion is changing rapidly in many countries. Since we have data from 1981 to the present, we can trace changes and follow what seems to be happening. You can see trends clearly comparing these values over time. And many other values and beliefs are changing, and each new wave of data, the one you're getting today being the latest, each new wave gives us greater volume, leverage in analyzing these changes, where they're taking place, what's happening, what direction, and gives us a handle on understanding why they're taking place. Well, the world continues to change. As we notice clearly, the current wave of rising xenophobia, authoritarian populism, the economic difficulties linked with the COVID-19 pandemic and so on, all of them are posing new changes, new challenges to society. I think the data from these surveys can help you understand what's happening. And so we turn these data over to you. I look forward to seeing what you will find. I hope someday we'll be able to meet face to face and I can hear what you've learned. In the meantime, keep healthy. Best wishes.